What's going on, everybody? It's Rodrigo Fondor with Whiteboard Wednesday, episode number 31. So today, what are we talking about? We are talking about MLS listing terms or statuses of properties. So we're going to go through the list of all the different terms when you're looking at a property, or maybe you're working with an agent and they say, oh, this property is coming soon, or it's under contract, or it's expired, or whatever the case may be. We're going to run through all of these terms really quickly, give you an insight. If you have any questions, just let us know below. We'll do our best to answer them. And hopefully this will just kind of educate you and put you in a better position to understand what some of the real estate jargon is. So let's start. Coming soon. So this is a situation where there's a listing agent and a seller, and they've signed a listing agreement, but for whatever reason, the property is not ready to be sold yet, or to be marketed, I mean. And so this is designed to let people know that it's coming, create some excitement, and then it's going to be on the market and it's going to be active. So a couple of things about coming soon. I'm going to run out of space, so I'm just going to verbally tell you this. Coming soon, it can only be for 21 days at the most, and there has to be a valid listing agreement in place. And also, it is not designed for the listing agent to get a head start to try to bring a buyer to the table. So this is really designed to create some excitement and to have the listing agent and the seller make a coordinated effort to get the property ready for the market and make it active. Which brings us to active. This is what probably everybody's the most familiar with. Pretty concise. Active just means that a property is on the market with availability for it to go under contract and for it to desire to sell. So that one's pretty straightforward. So what happens? Somebody sees a property that's active, they like it, and then it goes under contract. All right. So under contract has two parts. It has a show, and then it has a no-show. Let's start with the under contract part. Under contract just means that a property has a contract on it. The seller and the buyer have agreed to terms in writing on what's going to take place. So it's going to sell at such price and such, however many days of due diligence, the earnest money, closing time frame, closing, agent, and then how it's being purchased. So that's what under contract means. It's just a valid agreement, a valid contract. Under contract show means that the listing agent and the seller have determined that they want people who are interested in the property to keep looking at it. So they're going to keep showing the property and seeing if they can maybe get a backup offer. By the way, we're going to be talking about that next week. And if it's a no-show, it just means that the listing agent and the seller don't feel like there's any need to show the property anymore. They feel really good about the offer or whatnot. They're not interested in having anybody else look at the house. Which brings us to the next one. So, when a property is closed. Pretty straightforward. It just means that contract's gone from active to closed. The seller sells, the buyer buys, and it's a full transaction that's come to fruition. So there's two other things that can happen during, when a property is under contract. We'll go over those here really quick. Let me create a little bit more space for us to work through this. All right, so then there's two things that can happen. Not every property that goes active is actually going to get to close. It's going to hit one of two things. It's going to either become expired or it's going to be temporarily off market. Expired. This happens automatically whenever you sell your property and you create a listing agreement. It's going to say it's going to be from January 1st, 2019 through June 20th, 2019. It's going to be a predetermined time frame. As soon as the days on market or whenever that listing agreement hits that time, unless there's been another, a relisting agreement or an addendum to the listing agreement, then the property is going to become expired. It's going to come off the MLS. People are going to be able to see that it was listed, but it's not going to be considered active anymore. The other thing that can happen is a property goes temporarily off market. And this requires a written agreement between the listing agent and the seller. And basically what happens is that you can, that for instance, we had a property, we were trying to sell it in one condition, and it didn't move at the price we wanted it to in the current condition. So we actually pulled it off the market. It was temporarily on the market. There was still a valid listing agreement between ourselves as the sellers and our agent as the listing agent, and we pulled it off the market to do some work to it. Once we completed the work, it's no longer temporarily on the market and actually moved back to being a active listing. So that's an example. So temporarily off market, maybe you're living in your house and you want to take your property off during Christmas because you don't want to have to deal with showings during Christmas. You've got family coming into town or whatnot. So all it is, it's just an effort to let people know, hey, we still want to sell just for this time frame. We don't want to deal with, showing it, etc. And I also forgot, there's one other thing we need to talk about. We'll squeeze it in right here. It's listings that are withdrawn. So this is what happens. Oh, it might be the worst day of my life, but let's see, there it is, withdrawn. This happens when the seller says, hey, to the listing agent, you know what, I don't want to sell anymore, or I don't want to have my property listed anymore, or hey, I just don't want to work with you for whatever reason. And so the property becomes withdrawn, and that just shows that it's off of the MLS and it's no longer active. Hope you found this information helpful. If there's anything else you want us to talk about on Whiteboard Wednesdays, let us know. We look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care.